Greetings, my beautiful buffoons out there. Welcome to the second video on the purely hypertruthical channel that somehow is up on YouTube. It'll likely be taken down at some point. I am filing a backup way to have these videos available, and in fact, this is common use material. Everybody can use these videos. I'm not monetizing anything. I'm not asking for money. I just want as many people to be stimulated enough to really ponder and contemplate the things that I'm saying. And by the way, what I say, I can concede that it's my opinion, that you shouldn't, believe what I'm saying. In fact, I'm openly admitting that I'm not necessarily telling you lies. But I am withholding certain truths for a very good reason. And at some point, I hope to be able to share those reasons with the people who don't understand it so that you can understand my reasoning behind my approach. So, uh, please go back and watch the first video if you haven't already, but read the description first, please. Okay, I say that I intended to offend as many people as possible. I really didn't. If I did intend for that, I would have been offending absolutely everybody in so many different ways. But what the current population of this country, the majority of us, what we react to the most is anger, fear, and the belief system. So why wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that the best way to create the most engagement in the fastest way possible would be to piss you off, would be to offend you, would be to say things that make you feel strong enough about to confront me or question. And of course, again, we've been specifically trained this way to think. All of the news you certainly could consider fake news. Um, since I'm doing so poorly right now at forming any sort of train of thought process that I want to follow, I'm just going to jump around again to a couple different things that when they pop into my mind, I'm going to blurt them out. And hopefully I don't have to subject you to any sort of wardrobe failure here that might leave you blind. Okay, so what I remember some of the stuff I said in the video that I recorded earlier. That language is one of the most destructive weapons or dangerous weapons because it has the power to implant a certain way of thinking that lead to certain beliefs that allow a certain system of belief to grow rapidly and to nurture the feelings that support that belief system. And those factors will ultimately be the leading reason why a person ends up behaving and being the way that they are later in life. Okay, so I mentioned something about the first most important step of mind control. Brainwashing is this belief in Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, etc. Because by the time that most kids who believe those things realize that Santa Claus isn't real, at that point they've spent the majority of their life believing that, believing in absolute impossibility, something that is obviously not true and couldn't be true. And that's dangerous. Okay, it not only leads to the potential for now those children not to trust their parents, who they should trust and believe more than anyone at their young age, even though unfortunately there are a lot of evil parents that shouldn't exist. But I'm talking about the typical parent who mean well. They're good parents. They're great parents. Um, and, you know, having their kids believe in these things don't necessarily always end up in a negative consequence. But no matter what, they're eventually led into an educational system. And even the homeschooled kids, who I find typically are some of the smartest kids because they haven't learned in a public education forum. Um, but the information available to their parents and what their parents have learned thus far are not going to be adequate enough to completely keep their kids from the mind control and manipulation that is going to be targeted directly at them no matter what. Okay, so at the time that a lot of kids learn that Santa Claus isn't real, they've also already begun to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, standing up, facing the flag, placing their right hand over their heart to show such respect and devotion every single day. And I believe that the majority of states still require this to happen in these educational facilities. Um, there are a few that maybe don't, because the U.S. Supreme Court is actually not really the issue. The United States government is really not the issue. In fact, the United States government, just the way it's set up, there's not necessarily anything wrong with it. But the way that it's set up does allow corruption to dominate and to maintain control. And all of the people that got into government, I believe that a lot of them had the right intentions. And once they get there, they realize, well, what can I do? What can I really do? If they want to change the world and they try their best, they're often thwarted by a corrupt entity. Um, so what I'm saying is that there are ways to successfully dismantle the evil that drives the world. There are no easy ways, but there are ways. And we need to utilize those ways. We really do. Because now our kids are learning that the this country is the greatest country in the world, and not only the greatest country in the world, but the world's superpower. And we have the right to tell countries that want to join this amazing allied force for good, NATO, that they need to apply. And okay, it's ridiculous. I don't know how many of you know this already, but Putin, right after he was put into power, like in 2000, he said, why would Russia not be a part of NATO? We deserve to be a part of our Western European partners. Of course, Putin was dismissed. Um, Putin said he shouldn't have to wait in line with a bunch of countries that don't matter. And remember, there are far too many ways to interpret anything, but especially what world leaders mean. Leaders of the country, leaders of any sort of system. And I think what he was saying was it's criminal to form a gang of powers under the guise of having this great allied entity to ensure peace and that we have each other's back, but not the bad countries. It's a power dynamic. It's a gang. It's ridiculous. Just like so many things are ridiculous. Okay, we all need to come together. Don't look at somebody who, like, okay, for instance, the extreme MAGAs. Okay, if you're a Democrat, don't look at them as your enemy. If you are a Trump supporter, don't look at the Biden supporters as your enemy. We have far more in common with each other than we do with anybody in the US government. We have the power to make change. We are purposely kept divided so that we continuously fall, so that we cannot truly unite, so that we can stand on solid ground that promotes the freedom that we should all have to pursue happiness, to live a life that's not in slavery to an entity that's going to just make the most ridiculous decisions with the money that you are forced to give them, and that use that money to perpetuate evil deeds and evil aspirations. Now, as long as that pursuit of happiness doesn't involve just willy-nilly inventing things that are going to severely compromise the ability for not only the human species to successfully propagate and live a better life in the future, but all organisms on this planet. And if anybody thinks that it was a great idea to just allow plastic to be put out on the market and say, oh, well, we didn't know better at the time, that's BS. Um, There are so many examples of that that I don't want to get into right now. And I'm going to tell you that the blatant atrocities that the U.S. government has carried out against its own people, its own citizens, its own life support and blood, the tax money of the citizens. There's enough information online for you to look up and to discover just countless disgusting things that the government has carried out. Operation Paperclip is not a direct example of what I just mentioned, but I hope you all know about Project Paperclip, how the U.S. Saved a lot of Germans, the most evil Nazis. They saved them from persecution to bring them over to the United States so that we could potentially build a more successful space program. Right? Who can justify that? That's If they can justify that, I could justify utilizing groups of people who aren't afraid to die for their cause to attack certain things that that should be attacked. Um, and please remember to interpret my words rather loosely, because there are so many ways you could interpret this, and I truly care about each and every one of you watching this. I care enough to do whatever I possibly can to try to help a conversation that needs to continuously take place to develop and grow, because the most no matter how much you think you can't relate to somebody else in this country who believes certain things or does certain things, they're your ally. They're your true ally. Okay, a politician is not. And we have so many reasons why we need to get over all of the things that keep us divided. Let me give you a great example of a way that people are successfully kept divided in order to control them. And it's going to be obvious for those of you who have had the awesome opportunity to spend any time in a jail or prison in an area of the country that's large enough to have a large jail or prison in any area, and the diversity of the population to include at least um, black people, white people, Mexicans. Okay, in jail, it's the most absurd display of racism and hatred towards other prisoners that you rarely see on the streets in public. Okay, because there are hundreds or thousands of prisoners, detainees, in a facility controlled by a very limited number of guards. So as long as you're distracted by the things that truly don't exist to keep you engaged in a belief system that keep you weak, the fewer people are the minority, like these guards, they're always going to be the most powerful. Yeah, I have some funny stories about my experiences in jail regarding this phenomenon, but um, I've seen it. It's just like how I feel bad now even saying like how stupid can you be, because it's not these people's fault if they are if they could be considered stupid. It's the situations that they've been through, the environment that they've been brought up in, the things that they've been told and taught that keep them this way. Okay, so and these individuals, the way that they think and believe, it's only natural for them to have a section of the common area of a jail that has a TV that's always set to BET and a certain audience watching it, while the other side has some maybe country music thing going and all these white guys sitting around, and then you have Mexicans playing card games behind the two groups, and everybody's separated. And when let me move on to a couple other things if they pop into my mind, because I don't want to spend too much time on any one thing. Please understand what my approach is about is trying to unite citizens together, because you absolutely do have the power to make the change. And so why I called everybody a moron and how stupid they are, and it's because we do have the power to change. And I wanted to quickly grab your attention and dispel this fallacy that your true enemies are the opposing party's support group, the base, the RNC, the DNC, whatever. And you know what stood out to me about one of the things that I've heard that should be good devices. If you want change, primary them. Vote in the primaries. Well, that's kind of like saying, it's kind of like having let's say, a McDonald's team lead tell an employee who can't stand the manager because the manager is absolutely horrible for whatever reason. It's like telling that employee, well, if you want to make the change that will replace that manager, you have to start by cleaning the bathroom. Get to it. It makes as much sense as that. We need to make the change from the top down, and at the very top, none of us can see. I'm not even going to say that um, it's these deep state, dark shadow government parts of various. Gotta be careful what I say here. I'm just gonna say that I am completely open to every possibility. If I didn't always leave myself open to every possibility, I would be on the path to ever narrowing my mind and my ability to find the real solutions, because I might not be able to discover what the real problems are. Okay? Like, this may sound crazy to a lot of you. I'm open to the fact that ultimately maybe none of us have any choice in the matter, because we're controlled by a much superior race of beings that are on this planet, that they may be capable of such effective influence that nobody will ever have a real choice or chance or freedom. And by the way, I attacked Christians, I think, in my last video. I think, I absolutely think you have the right to have any sort of belief and faith that you want to. But in the modern day system that we're in, it could be dangerous to just have a certain belief or faith and allowing that to be your ultimate happiness and a sense of peace, because then you might ignore some of the things that you could do to change things for the better. But under the ideal conditions, yeah, I would absolutely. I don't believe in religious persecution. I don't believe in any type of persecution, really. But so I know that potentially a very specific type of persecution needs to be directed in a very specific way to certain individuals, um, in order to enact the change that we need to have the best chance of any future at all. Okay, so the United States and generally the world as a whole is just like a jail that is controlled by the very few, but who maintain the most power. There's a lot of disinformation out there. I mean, we've been we've been led to the waters of disinformation and forced to drink and swim and believe that it's our life force, or at least the element that gives us life force. But there's also a lot of truth out there that if you dig deep enough for long enough and you are able to come to your own conclusions based on comparing a lot of information against each source that presents the information to you, there's a lot of truth that can come out. And what's also unfortunate, though, about these truths is that they're only partial truths. They're not going deeper. They're not. They're not giving credence to the fact that there are so many reasons why their truth is potentially true, but also very likely only a tiny portion of the truth. Um, we've always been poisoned by the foods we eat, by the news that we're told, by the education that we receive, by the air we breathe, thanks to humans. Um, it's scary. It really is. And your mental health is important to me. So I've experienced lengthy durations of psychosis. Uh, well, okay, the most psychosis I've ever experienced has been after being told I need a prescription antipsychotic, among several other medications. I had opposed meds for such a long time, and I was so fed up with all of the disgusting things happening around me that when I finally just was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to a psychiatrist or psychologist or a doctor and see what they think about my feelings based on what is so obvious to me. They immediately said, you need antipsychotics. And after a while of taking these, there are a couple of people that can attest to this. that I literally was psychotic. Like I was saying and doing the most weird things, and I had no control over it. None. Thanks, Western medicine. Thank you, Big Pharma. Thank God I got off of those medications. But I also recognize how the battle for truth and justice and all of the things that are going around us, that are going on around us right now, and then the disclosure of the evil intentions behind those truths, that's enough to drive me crazy. And um, I want everybody to engage in a conversation with each other and with me, but not at the expense of your mental health, because I don't want anybody to be harmed um, in a way that's directly related to this content, even though you're already being harmed by what you don't know and other things. I truly care about you and your health and your wants and needs, and I want to hear about those things. Please leave me a comment about how you feel about anything and everything, what your take on politics is, what is truly wrong in this country, tell me your thoughts on how we fix things. Okay, I'm gonna make a somewhat arrogant claim here, but I know, I feel so stupid saying I know anything, but I know how to fix some things, and I know what needs to happen in order for that to take place. At this point in time, there's no possible way I can start coming out and telling you certain things because I'm already being monitored by, you mysterious people. Um, and it's so important that we truly come together. We need to, for everybody's good. As soon as I stop this video, there's going to be things that pop into my mind that, like, why the heck didn't I say this, especially after saying this and this. I don't care. This is just a video to update you on why I believe I have to do certain things in a certain way that might not make sense to a lot of people, and that might lead you to think that I could potentially have alternative motives, or that I'm just lying, or mentally ill. Um, I don't care. What I care about is a better future for everybody. And so I guess at this point, I'm just going to stop this video and see if I can't get some people to start up a conversation in the comments. Thank you so much, everybody. I love you and care about you, and I hope that we all somehow can make it through some of the horrific things that are going to be happening soon, and that we can live in peace someday. All right, take care, everybody.